Hello and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut and sew a combat trouser. So if this is something you like, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So here is my pattern paper and I'm going to go ahead to mark out all the basic measurements you need. So you're going to mark from your waistline, you're going to measure 10 inches to get your hip point. After marking that 10 inches, you're going to go ahead to mark your waist to knee. So my waist to knee point is 21 inches and you're going to find your trouser length. My trouser length is 40 and you're going to go ahead to add 1.5 or 2 inches for your folding allowance. I had to redo it and I'll extend the lines. So I'll go ahead and I will write out all my measurements, my waist, my knee, my hip point and my trouser length. So after I'm done labeling it, we are going to start inserting our measurements. At the hip, I'll mark the hip circumference divided by 4. So that hip circumference I have, I'll just take it up to the waistline. So the reason why I'm doing this is just to make sure that what I have here, I have a straight line at this point to enable me draw out my crotch curve. So I'll go down by 1 inch, which will be serving as my crotch line. So I'll just go ahead to rule this out, and after I'm done doing that, I'm going to go ahead to extend my hip line down to that point. After marking my crotch, I'll be marking the thigh line. So if you're making a free combat trouser, you don't really need this. I have a video on how to make a combat trouser also on my channel. So but for this particular pattern, it's not so free like that other pattern. Now you want to draw out your front crotch extension. To get that is your hip circumference divided by 4. Whatever you have, you divide it again. So my hip circumference is 40 divided by 4, I have 10. 10 divided by 4 again, I have 2.5. I'll go ahead to mark that 2.5 at my crotch. So from there, I'll place my curved rule and I will connect and draw out a curve. That is my crotch curve for my crotch front extension. So now I'll place back my tape and I'll place from my front crotch extension back to my trouser line. So I'll be dividing this into 2. So I'll use this measurement and I will mark. So what I have is 12.5 inches. 12.5 inches, I'll go ahead and place my tape and I'll mark 12.5 inches, sorry, divided by 2, you have 6.25 inches, approximately 6.3. So I'm just going to mark it from the ending point and I'll just go ahead to draw out a straight line on my pattern. After doing that is to go ahead to insert your measurements. So now we're going to start from the knee. So I don't want this to be too free. If not, I'll just use the measurement at my crotch all the way down. So I measured my knee round. What I have is about 20 inches. 20 divided by 2, I have 10 inches. So that 10 inches, I'll be sharing it into 2 parts. So 10 divided by 2, I have 5 on both sides. So in case you don't understand, let me repeat myself. So measuring my knee round, the measurement I want at that point, I have 20 inches. So you have to place your tape and measure it round. So 20 inches divided by 2, that's 10 inches for the front and 10 inches for the back. So that 10 inches for the front, I'll divide it to 2 equal parts. That will give me 5 inches at both sides. After marking that 5 inches, I'll add ½ inch at both sides of my trouser. So for my thigh measurement, I'm going to start inserting it from the end of my pattern. So my thigh is 26 divided by 2, I have 13. So I'll mark that 13 inches plus 1 inch sewing allowance. So after marking it there, I'm going to connect it all the way to my knee this way. So after connecting that part, I'm just going to go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to start connecting from the other side of the knee down to the upper part of this pattern. So after I'm done connecting, this is what I have. Moving down to the lower part, you can decide to use what you have on your knee. But for me, instead of using 20, I'll be using 18 inches. So 18 inches divided by 2, I have 9 inches. So that 9 inches, I'll share it on both sides. That is 4.5, 4.5, and I'll be adding half inch on both sides, making the sewing allowance 1 inch, and I'll extend it down to the lower part of this pattern. And after extending it, I'll take it up to the knee part of my pattern. So next, we are heading to the waistline. So if you're using an elastic for this pattern, you can just leave it this way, so the elastic will gather your waist. But for this pattern, we are going to insert a trouser band. So I went in by half inch from that point, and I extended it down to my crotch line this way. And from that half inch, I'll measure my waist circumference divided by 4, and I'll mark 1 inch for sewing allowance. I'll go ahead and place my ruler, and I'm going to connect my pattern starting from the waist down to the hip point, that is closer to the hip point, and this is where the waistline is starting. So after now, I'm just going to go down by half inch from my waistline. But before cutting that out, I'll go ahead and cut out my pattern. You can just go ahead and cross check your measurements if you actually use the measurements, but if you don't want, you can just use your crotch, that is your hip measurement plus your front crotch extension. Take it all the way to the lower part and cut out your trouser. So I want my cargo pant to be a bit fitted, so I'm going to go in or go down by half inch from the waistline, and I'll blend it up to the waistline of the pattern. So after that, after blending in the line, go ahead to cross check to make sure that is your waist circumference plus your sewing allowance. So my waist circumference there is 7 plus 1 inch, that's 8 inches, and I'll just go ahead to cut out that part. So after cutting this, we'll go ahead to cut out the back pattern of this dress. To cut out your back pattern, you're going to place your material or pattern on another fabric or another pattern paper. So after placing it, you're going to go ahead to pin it down. So at the front part of my trouser, I'll be marking 2 inches, and I'm going to extend that all the way down to the crotch extension. So for the back crotch extension, I'm using 2 inches. So if you have a bigger butt, you can go ahead to mark 2.5. This is just for the butt allowance at the back of your trouser to make it more comfortable for you when you're sitting down. And I'm just going to go ahead to connect all the way from the lower part down to the upper part of the trouser. So at the upper part of my trouser, I'll measure about 2.5 inches. So if you have a bigger butt, you can also use 2.5, 3 inches, it is still okay. And you can also use 2 inches. So I'll extend that line. So measure what I have back here, which is 8 inches, and I'll slant it this way and make sure that I have that 8 inches connecting down to that point this way, and I will rule a line down to that point. So whatever you have on your front waistline should be what you have on your back waistline. So after connecting the line, you're going to go ahead to connect it to your hip point or close to your hip point. So all you have to do is to make a point at your hip, and then from here place your curved rule, or you can just draw it out also with your free hand if you can do that. So I'm just going to go ahead to place, and I will connect. So after marking that, the next step is to go ahead to extend your pattern by 1 inch in front of your trouser. So I'll just take 1 inch all the way to the lower part of the trouser to the knee, and I will go ahead to connect it to the upper part of my trouser. So after I'm done connecting, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out my trouser. So for the back, we're just going to trace what we have initially at the back part of the pattern, and for the front, you're just going to trace out the new measurements at that point. After cutting this out, we'll go ahead to cut out the trouser flaps and pockets for this pattern. So to cut out your trouser flap or zip flyer, you have to use about 2 or 2.5 inches for width, and the length is about 8 to 9 inches. So I'll go ahead and measure it out. So at the lower part is a bit curvy because of the
everything I do is
crotch.
for my woman.
The crotch line at that point is curvy, so
Anything I talk where you talk, I go do.
maintain the same shape at the lower
Me, I know they see another girl for my visuals.
So for the front part of this for the front part of this trouser, the pocket on it is either you top stitch it or you place it at the back. So for the length, I'm using about 10.5 inches. So I let the trouser go down my hip point by ½ inch. So this totally depends on what you want, and from this part I'll measure about 3 inches, and I'll measure about 4 inches or 3.5 at this point, and from there you are going to go ahead to connect it all the way to that part. So for the width of the pocket, I used 7 inches. For the length, I used 10.5. So this totally depends on you. So now if you notice on your combat trouser, the front pocket, you have one that is like this. So you place and top stitch it. So you'll be cutting out 2 pieces for the front pattern. So for the side of this combat trouser, we have 2 pockets. So we'll be cutting that out actually when we are making the dress. And then we are moving over to the back pocket of this trouser. So for the back pockets, I'm going to make use of, I marked 4.5 before, but I went ahead to reduce it by 4 inches. So I'm using 3 by 7 inches. So after cutting this, I went ahead to reduce it just like I said, because the pocket was the back pocket cover, actually this is the pocket cover, it was actually looking bigger, so I had to go ahead to reduce it to 3.5 inches or so. So now you're just going to go ahead to cut it out, and you're going to cut out 2 pieces for this, for the back. After that, you're going to go ahead to cut out the back pocket. So for this back pocket, I made use of 7 inches by 7 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead to mark this out, and I'm going to cut it out. So just like I said, for the side pockets, we are going to go ahead to actually cut it when we were sewing, because so that in case we want any adjustments, we can do it at that point. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button and join us on the sewing tutorial of this pattern. Thanks.